You ever get tired of feeling stuck, tired of the pain, of all the patterns that just keep leading to nowhere? Yeah, well, guess what? We all do. Now, the only thing left is, how are we going to end all of that? Are we going to let life keep happening to us? Or are we going to embrace for life to happen for us? We all got to make that choice. And right now is the time. So let's grow. Moji J, thank you. Everybody who just joined, welcome to Grow Through It. Here is where we talk about different adversities we've faced in our lives, and not just how we've been through them, but how we've grown through and from them. So, for an example, my name is Cureage. I'm your host tonight. Every Monday, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. And if you guys are in other countries, I can't calculate all those different times. But so a little bit about my story is I grew up always doing sports. I was always competing in sports, um, football, basketball, soccer, you name it. But there was one sport that I started pretty much when I could walk was martial arts. And with martial arts, it was something that I was just, like I said, I was born into it and I just couldn't stop. So as I became a teenager, I noticed the UFC got really, really big and really, really popular. And I realized like this is something that I want to do for a living, right? So I just took that, ran with that, and made it my job. I trained 2, 3 times a day, 5, 6 times a week. Um, I mean, don't get me wrong, I still had fun. Obviously, this was my passion, but at the same time, it was a job. So there's a little difference there. And early on in my career, I did have a severe injury. I woke up one morning, I wasn't able to walk. So I had a slight herniated disc, my L6, my left leg was out of place, caused a lot of sciatic nerve damage, yada yada yada. Fast forward through that after some rehab and everything like that with my injury, I found myself really down. It was just hard to even watch the sport, but at the same time, kind of I couldn't keep myself away from it. So I would still be at the gyms, in crutches for a little while. And even though I was in crutches and just, hanging out with the coaches and everything on the sidelines, something I wasn't used to after all these years, I realized people were starting to come up to me for advice. And this is something that they never used to do before because pretty much because I was always busy training, right? So when I started getting people coming to me for advice, I was like, really? Like you guys actually care about like what I think or what I would do in this situation. So I was kind of flattered. And, instead of being sour and bitter and all that, I just went for it. And fast forward a little bit through that, I started noticing these people progressing. I'd be in the corner at their fights or I'd be just helping them before and camps, things like that. And all of a sudden I see them, winning and all these things. And I'm like, wow, this is like more fulfilling than even being in the cage or in that ring. And so, you know, fast forward everything, kind of long story short, I went from, being a fighter, having a horrible injury that I could have just been like, oh no, bitter, sour, I don't like this sport anymore. I'm against all this. I don't want to help you, yada, yada. I just kind of embraced all the things that started happening and I found a whole new love. And I've been doing it for almost over 10 years now. So that's a little bit about me and my story and how I grew through it. Um, but other than that, like I said, again, well, everybody, welcome to Cureage's show, Grow Through It. I am your host, Cureage or Cure. Um, but before I have our first guest, Lady G, come into the box, I want to let everybody know I appreciate you all for all the love, for being here tonight, for showing all the support. Means a lot to me. So this is our first official featured episode. So it's a little nerve wracking. I'm not gonna lie, but we're gonna have a lot of fun tonight. So I promise I'm not ignoring anybody. I see everybody coming in here, and I appreciate you all. So go ahead and request that box when you are ready, Lady G. Let's get this show started. Might have to make the box a little smaller real quick. Yep. There we go. How are you? Good, good. So if you guys have not already favorited Miss Lady G, please do. She's actually going for her top badge right now. So it's just a matter of time. Um, and real quick, again, everybody who just joined, welcome to Cureage's show, Grow Through It, where we talk about different adversities. Right now, Lady G is about to share a certain adversity and struggle. And you had mentioned some stuff when you were growing up that you had to kind of make a big decision early on in your life.
Yeah.
And it would have led one way really bad, one way really good, which is what you ended up doing.
Yeah.
So can you kind of elaborate back on that a little bit?
Sure. Growing up, my parents were never together. They weren't married. There was no happy home of both parents. It was always shared custody between my dad and mom. When I was at my dad's house, it was amazing here, but versus my mom's house, there's a lot of struggles there. A lot of things that any child would be traumatized through, um, including domestic violence and gangs and being homeless and moving um, place to place and being bounced around.
Right.
Um, so do I talk about my moment already that made it change to that?
Yeah, absolutely. We want to hear that
Um,
aha moment. I like to call it the aha moment. Like,
so
I had
definitely
to do
see
this.
most of my family struggle through life. I actually had an aunt that sat me down and said,
Hmm.
look, this is how your family is. Is this the life that you want to choose, or do you want to go out and do something better? And it was
Right.
literally that moment that I kind of looked around and saw what everybody else was into and kind of decided to be different and make the change. And it was crazy because it was such a young age to have my eyes open to what was going on around me.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
How old
so
were
I
you?
kind of, huh?
If you remember, how old do you remember if you
I,
were?
I want to say 11 or 12 because that's like where I
Okay.
reflect back and think like, okay, this is when I started getting into my honors programs and I started
Right.
really hustling and grinding and wanting all the things. Um, so yeah, I mean, I definitely did honors classes all growing up, straight A's. I definitely had something to prove.
Right. Yeah. You wanted to be different. You didn't want to be like the rest.
Right. I even actually ended up marrying my high school sweetheart at 18. We've been together for
Wow.
13 years and had 2 kids. I mean, we're separated right now, but I wanted
Besides the point,
I
that's pretty
wanted
cool. It's
everything
very rare.
perfect, especially because so many of my cousins of females were high school dropouts or didn't finish, didn't get their diplomas, didn't go to college, and just had kids. And I didn't want that. I had my daughter at 20. I refused to be a teenage mom. Um, and I've always had a job since I was 15 years old.
Right. And nothing obviously against people who are teenage moms. That's just not what
Absolutely
Lady
not.
G wanted. Um, and so going back a little bit, growing up, what were like some of your surroundings, that made you decide like I don't want, because I'm sure it was a lot easier to just blend in and be a part of that, right? Rather
Absolutely.
than, fight harder and work harder and do all this stuff that made you different from the rest of your family. So like
Especially
what,
because it was a norm. Like it was a norm for
right?
everybody to not. There wasn't a lot of marriage in our family. A lot of people wouldn't be with their
There's not a lot of
boyfriends.
marriage still today.
So I mean, and even the couples that I grew up watching, it wasn't anything to role model after. So you didn't really have that structure in place of this is what it should be. So
So do you think that it was more like your parents, and forgive me, or was it more that something like you kind of thought more of like your future down the line, like when I have kids, I want to make sure that I do better than this. So,
Absolutely.
so
I
you
think
were
the
already
second,
thinking about kids at 12.
absolutely.
I mean, I think a lot of us do, especially, I
There's nothing they could reflect back on their lives where they could say, this is what traumatized me in my childhood. So,
right. Yeah. And so now fast forwarding, so like your aunt was obviously the biggest key point to your growth.
yeah,
Did she do anything like when you decide, like, so when she was like, hey, look, this is your family, this is where you can be, did she like say like, what do you need from me? Was she like part of that help to kind of like, or was it just that conversation she had with you?
it was literally just that conversation of this isn't what you have to do. You don't have to be like everybody else. There's more out there that you can do. So it was just kind of the belief that you can do something else.
Right. You don't you don't gotta be like them. You can be better.
Yeah. And not that there's anything wrong with them. I mean, they're living their lives and doing amazing, but
It's just not for you, or wasn't for you. It still isn't for you.
yeah,
You're
like
top
I'm
edge
literally the
almost.
second one to go to, I'm the second one in my family to go to college, you know.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, that's definitely impressive. And it's admirable because like I said, it is easy to fall into the norm of where you grow up, how you grow up, the people around you that you grow up with, especially family, right? Like family is a huge influence on us, especially at an early age. And to choose different, a different direction is not easy for anybody. And so that's definitely admirable that you chose tough route, I mean, the really tough route. Do you feel like your husband was a little bit of part of that growth process? Like when you,
absolutely, especially because I know so many people out here have so many relationships and histories, but I kind of got to grow with him. Like we started at nothing and kind of like
yeah,
got to help each other as children at 18, you know?
right,
So,
high school sweethearts, and you're not in high school anymore. Not that you're old, obviously, but you're you're definitely not in high school. None of us are.
yeah.
Um, but those of you who just tuned in, welcome to Grow Through It. I'm your host, Cureage or Cure. This is our first guest tonight, Miss Lady G. If you haven't already, please hit her with a favorite. Our show is every night, or my show is every night. I'm sorry, every Monday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, 11 p.m. Central. You know the deal. This is our first featured episode. So again, everybody who's come in, I have seen you all, unless you're lurking, but I've seen you all come in. I really appreciate you. Out of respect for the guests and the show, I cannot acknowledge every single person, but I see you all and I appreciate all the love and support. Just being here makes my heart filled. So back to the conversation now. You met your husband in high school, and what about that kind of made you feel like, because I remember you saying early on you want everything to be perfect, right? And I know we all can kind of agree like there's no really such thing as perfect, just progress, things like that. But what about that was something that you felt needed to happen? Is that what you felt like it needed to be with him?
Yes, especially because I grew up, like I said, with surrounded by people who weren't really happily in love, and I wanted that happily ever love story. You know, as a little girl playing with Barbies and your Ken dolls.
Right.
So to me, I've always been an old soul. So romance like that, it was super sweet to me. He was my prom date and everything. So
Wow. So was he, obviously I'm guessing he was different, or is different than what you were growing up around, right?
absolutely, especially because it was interesting that he grew up in like the same lifestyle and also chose that choice to not be of that lifestyle. So it was kind of different that we happened to cross paths. Yeah.
Cool. So how did you guys cross paths? I mean, other than being in the same school, was there like a certain,
I was actually dating his best friend at the time.
oh, look at you,
And
Miss
they happened,
Scandalous.
yeah, they were taking a bus ride home and they didn't have enough bus money to get from the last station home. And I actually had a vehicle. So they called me to come pick
Wow.
them up and
The
yeah.
Uber, the early Uber driver.
Hmm.
Magic in car romance, right? Car romance.
Right.
So you guys then got married like how long after high school? Right after high school, or
No, I got married to him 3 years after. We were together for 3 years.
okay,
And then I had my daughter like in our second year. So
nice. So now, from going from obviously choosing the harder but better path for you, rather than sticking around the family and the relatives and people you grew up around, fast forwarding to that, now you met your high school sweetheart. You fell in love with him in the car. I'm just kidding. Giving him a ride home,
it was
and
the rear mirror, eyes.
the rear view mirror, like that really got you. It's just,
Yeah.
so now you guys are married, and then you had your first daughter at 20, you said. And so, where about that did it help? Because I know there were there ever times, I mean, I'm guessing there were times, but were there ever times that you just kind of felt like the pull back to like, that old lifestyle that you were used to growing up?
Absolutely.
Because you're still communicate with your family, I'm assuming, right?
Absolutely.
So how and in what ways did your husband and your now, back then your newborn daughter, how did they help you kind of like keep from going back there?
Yeah. So I definitely, once I had my daughter, it was automatic, like, let's go to school, let's go to college, let's finish this. So, I mean, definitely during those difficult times, it's easy to have family sit there and whisper in your ears, like, it's fine, you can
Yeah.
find another man, don't make it work. Like, because long marriages aren't a thing anymore. It's so easy. Um, but it was also another thing in our family that, you stay with your man. It's that whole Hispanic culture. Like, you make your
Right.
man happy, you're the wife. Like, yeah.
And hopefully vice versa. So then, as career wise, I know that you are a nurse, correct? Registered nurse.
So I have my CNA, my MA, my RNA. I'm finishing up my last year of my bachelor's for my RN.
Oh, okay, congrats.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? Was that kind of like related to all the like, this is what I'm guessing and I'm kind of feeling is like you wanted to, back then when you had that your aunt come up to you and like, you know, hey, here's your family. Here's what you can be and can do. Let's go. Like, and you went that way. Do you ever feel like becoming a nurse was something that was related to, going back to like wanting to help your family, just kind of like a subconscious thing, or was it something else that got you down
So
that route?
I think there's two things I attribute that to. My first thing is I was actually in like an ROTC program. It was called the Naval Sea Cadets from like 12 to 18. Like, I literally went online, looked up being in the military, and they're like, hey, if you're a kid, you can do this ROTC program with us. And I signed up. Next thing you know, there's a recruiter calling my family and like, hey, she's gonna go to boot camp. Cool. So doing that, definitely, I wanted to be a Navy nurse. After having my daughter, obviously, I didn't want to travel and leave her. So I gave up the nursing part. I meant the Navy part, but I kept the nursing. My other part was my silver lining in everything that happened to me as a child was my great grandfather. He would literally come and pick me up and spoil me rotten and show me the good sides.
Right.
Um, and being around him, like I said, that helped with my old soul. So helping him, I gravitated towards CNA because now I get to work with seniors and pay back. So I've done that. I've been a nurse for about 12 years. So it's really nice helping people back. Yeah.
So it's definitely, it had something to do with your family, but it was
Right.
just more about the feeling of how you felt when you were helped out.
Yeah. And I
Which,
read this quote one time that said, "Be to people what you didn't have growing up." So I feel like that's what I.
yes, yes, be who you are, or be the person you wish you had, or
Right.
wish you were like had around when you were older. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny story, quick story. When I had COVID a couple years when it first, became a pandemic and everything,
Mhm.
I was in the hospital for a week, and I never, I mean, I always respected nurses, but I never really experienced too much, nursing like that, until I was in the hospital. And man, did I like come out of that hospital just being like, I almost thought about going into nursing school. Like, I was like, these people work so hard,
Right.
and sometimes they work harder than the doctors. And not to put doctors down or anything, because doctors are, great, obviously, but at the same time I was just like, man, I did not realize how hard these nurses work. So it definitely was like an eye opener for me.
Right.
But everybody, if you have not already, please favorite Miss Lady G. She just shared a little bit about one of her growth stories and how she kind of went from growing up into a rough environment with family, friends, even where she lived, etc., to one conversation that changed her whole life from her aunt.
Mhm.
And she just decided, I'm going the hard route. I'm doing whatever I need to do because I know what I want. She knew what she wanted at an early age, and that's rare to say nowadays. So, but thank you, Lady G. I'll have you come back in a little bit after Coco.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go ahead and have you hop out of the box. And everybody who has just joined or joined recently, thank you for being here. This is our first featured episode of Grow Through It with your host, me, Cureage or Cure, either one works. I appreciate everyone that's here. I appreciate all the love. I appreciate, all of you. I'm sorry if I cannot acknowledge each person that has come in, each person that's gifting, but I do appreciate you and I do see you all. So thank you ahead of time. Real quick, before we have Miss Coco come into the box, I'm going to do a little quick intermission. Let's just call it that. So I do always have my quotes each week. Um, so the first quote is, change begins with acceptance, acceptance of what is already so. And I kid you not, each week when I pick a quote, I don't know the stories of my guests. And I swear it hits home every time. So just this quote alone, before I get to the other one, change begins with acceptance, acceptance of what already is so. Lady G literally took a view at her family and the people she was around growing up at an early age and said, well, this is who they are. This is where I'm at. Now what can I do? That's pretty ironic that was a quote. And then the other quote says, I think this one also fits well for both guests tonight, is that I will one day die is what wakes me up to life every single day. So just the fact that we know we're gonna go one day makes us want to live life even more, right? But yeah, so again, everybody, thank you for coming to episode 7 of Grow Through It. My name is Cure. I am your host tonight. We are about to have our second guest of the evening, Miss Coco. So whenever you're ready, Miss Coco, go ahead and request that guest box. And real quick, one thing too that kind of correlates with, I know a little bit about Coco's story as well now, Lady G's story is, I don't know if any of you have heard of the kintsugi ritual. It's an old Japanese ritual. It's where they take certain handmade pottery, certain things like bowls, like cups, things like that, and they break it. They shatter it to pieces. But what happens is they, I don't want to say glue, that's not really the right word, but they put it back together, each piece by piece, with gold. So they seal it back up with this gold. So it's like gold slated into the cracks. And the whole belief and philosophy behind that is nothing is truly beautiful or perfect or whatever word you want to use until it's actually been broken down and then picked back up again. That's kind of the whole philosophy on that. So that's something I always like to talk about in each episode of the show. So again, thank you all for coming to Grow Through It with your host, me, Cure or Cure Age. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and have Coco hop in the box, and we're going to hear a little bit about her growth story.
Hi,
Coco, how are you? Good
I'm good. How
afternoon.
are you?
Good, good.
All right.
So I know it is 2 p.m., 2:30 p.m. there.
It is. Yep.
So Coco does have a job interview in just a little while, so we gotta kind of speed this one up. So I know you talked to me a little bit, Coco, before the show about how you got out of a very hard and rough relationship that just
Yep.
was not good for you mentally, physically, all those things. Um, can you share with us just a little bit of how that went, how you got yourself out of there in the right time,
Absolutely.
and the things you
And
did?
your last quote that you said kind of resonated exceptionally well with my story. So
That I will one day die wakes me up to live every day.
100%. So
Yeah.
I was in a highly toxic relationship. It's already mentioned. So it was domestic violence. I was in it for about 3.5 years. Um, and quite honestly went throughout that whole time trying to help someone else who didn't want to help himself but wanted to hurt me in the process. And I had kind of that epiphany moment where I thought to myself, if I don't get out of this right now, I'm not going to be here in 2 days. So it was very much that fight or flight type of life experience.
Absolutely.
And I chose flight.
Yeah.
Quite literally, I jumped on the last plane out of the city that I was in that day. But it
I know you mentioned you had some help with that too. What, your
absolutely.
grandmother?
So I actually had my ex-partner's family on my side. So it was a big bit of an effort to actually get me out of the house without them knowing.
Right.
But it's funny because I went from someone who had everything and had an amazing life. I was doing my music 7 days a week, 6, 7 days a week, full-time job, my own place. I went from that person to just being kind of just a body. I
Just
couldn't think for
existing.
myself. I couldn't act upon my own instincts. I always had to second guess myself or ask a question if I was allowed to do something. And it was almost like I was on a leash.
Mm, that's
And
rough.
being someone who was so independent and then going to being someone who couldn't decide what they were having for dinner or couldn't make a decision whether they wanted to sit out the back or out the front of their house. It's very off-putting
Yeah.
as someone who was always so sure of themselves.
Right.
Um, so that decision to leave was kind of like my mind click moment of going, no, I want to live and I want to live being me. And so I literally have spent the last 3 years kind of refinding myself. I was
Rebuilding.
completely silenced as a musician to not be able to sing um, because of the trauma that was brought upon music is
Right.
very, very hard. My entire world was gone. So
So what got you to that point? Like I called it earlier, the aha moment, where you're like, I need to go. It's time I do something. Was
yeah,
there like a
so
certain point where you just looked in the mirror, or did someone say something like kind of Lady G's story? Her aunt had that conversation with her,
yeah,
or did you
so
happen to come across my quote before I did?
my my ex-partner's sister is who we were living with at the time. Um, and she'd actually pulled my ex-partner off of me um, and told me to go to the bathroom and just get away from the area.
Mm,
And she came up to me about 5 minutes later and she's like, you're not going to be here if this keeps going
yeah, you
on.
gotta
Like,
go.
you're not going to be here. So what do
Right.
you want to do? How do we fix this? um, and that was kind of the moment because I've been thinking about it. I've been going, can I keep doing this? How do I get out of it? What do I do? What are my next steps? But for someone else to kind of say what you already know, it's almost like a bit of a slap in the face of going, you've known this for so long.
Right.
But it
Yeah,
took someone
absolutely.
else to kind of bring it more to the forefront of going, it's not you who sees it, it's everyone who sees it.
Right. And I think that's the case in a lot of people's lives, whether it be, like your situation or a job situation, whatever it may be, someone's just the reminder, someone's like, you got this, or you need to do this. Like, I see you, blah, blah, blah. It's it's like you said, I mean, sometimes, yeah, it is like a slap in the face, or sometimes it's just like a nudge on the shoulder, like, hey, like, wake up.
Yeah.
It's time to do something. Like, it's time, like, you got to do this. So I know that, let's fast forward just a little bit. I know that you did appear um, coming back, was it coming back onto the app? Or
Um,
were you on the app prior and then you came back and everyone was like, whoa, what's this big
so
change that you did?
oh, my moment.
Your Britney
So
Spears moment? Is that what you
I
called
always
it?
classified myself as a box streamer. So I always joined people's boxes.
Okay.
I had no issues jumping in the box. That was fine. I was good friends with a lot of people.
Yeah,
Um,
boxes are fun.
and everybody wanted me to start streaming, and I was a little bit nervous, a little bit shy, surprisingly. And I did it here and there a little bit. And then I quite honestly couldn't come on, and I'd mentioned cutting my hair very short or shaving it off. And their first comment was, "You're too preppy to do that. You'll never do it. You would never do that to yourself."
So it was like
And
reverse
so
psychology.
midway through that phone call, I literally grabbed a pair of scissors and went, "Do you really think I wouldn't do it?" And I just went to town. And then I grabbed a razor and I shaved it. So
Wow.
it was
That's,
one
I
of the
almost did that
most,
the other day, but it's a little different for a guy.
well, exactly. Like, oh my God, my sister's like, "We do that all the time." And I'm like, yes, but my hair literally went from where this wig is now to completely gone.
So did that signify something for you? Like a
It was
fresh
that new
start,
beginning. That
new
was
beginning.
that was my I released every single part of me that was holding me back in that old place, and I got to kind of rejuvenate.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even now, as my hair has started growing back, it's so much stronger
Right.
and same kind of
Well,
thing.
the person in front of us is so much stronger in general.
Yeah.
Um, Everybody who has joined, please favorite Miss Coco. Um, she does make music as well. If you follow her on Instagram, all of her links are there. And everybody, welcome to Grow Through It. This is episode lucky number 7. I call it lucky number 7 because this is our first official featured episode. So everyone who's in here, who has come in here, who's been in here, thank you so much. I appreciate you all. I do see you, but out of respect for the guests and the show, I cannot acknowledge each person. So I appreciate all the love and just the fact that you guys are all here. And it's every Monday for all of you that are new, every Monday at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. If you're in Australia like Coco, it's 2 p.m. there. So on a Tuesday. So
Great day,
going
Tuesday.
back, I like Tuesdays. I love Mondays the most. I'm not gonna lie. I am a big Monday person.
Coming to you from the future. It's great.
Yeah,
Like,
this is our future. If you guys
optimistic.
are in the US, this is our future. There you go. So going back now a little bit, you took your first flight out of that situation, out of that city, and did you already have a place that you were able to go stay at, or did you have to?
Yeah, so I flew back to my parents' place. So I'm originally from West Australia, and I'd moved to Melbourne to do my music. And
Okay.
I swore that I would never go back to West Australia. And
So
it
I'm
was
not
that moment of going, okay, I actually have to live. So I
right.
went and stayed with my folks. So that was fun. It was kind of nice because I'd had to cut them all off. So they
Who?
kind of saw
Your
who I was.
parents?
Yeah, I'd cut my entire family, my friends. I had no one pretty much.
And that was because of the relationship, or
Yeah,
because?
because of that person.
Wow.
So my best friend of 11 years now, who I'm currently staying with, he's the only person throughout in my life that I was still able to talk to and kind of have around.
Yeah, like you said before, you kind of became just a body existing. Like
Yeah,
you no longer had like outside or communication or anything. You just were like
I had no
stuck.
control over anything that I did in my life. So I literally went. I didn't even have a phone of my
So
own.
it
Nothing.
was so it wasn't your family that chose. It was that you had to kind of choose to not. Okay,
Yeah.
I get that. That doesn't make sense, but I get what you're saying. If that makes sense,
Well,
doesn't make
it's
sense
pretty much
for why it
I was
happened, but I
forced
get
to
it.
cut everybody off.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, like, And was that hard when you flew back to go stay with your parents after that? Because I mean,
It
like I
was,
know as we're adults, like we're used to living on our own, doing our own thing, and being our own people. And then we go back to, mom and dad's
yeah.
house. It's
Look,
kind of
I'll
like,
be I'll be honest. Even my dad still says this every time, and he's said this for the last 20 years of my life. He will turn around and say, I cannot leave Coco and her mum in the same room for more than 10 minutes, or, the world is going to end.
wow.
But surprisingly, my mum and I and my dad, we all get on quite well. So going back there, for them, it was great. They had kind of in-house tech support. For
There you go.
myself, it was good to kind of just rebuild those family connections.
Yeah, and it's honestly like it's all about perspective, right? Like we can look at it like, oh man, now I have to go back to living with my mom and dad, or I have to go
Yeah,
back to living with family. Or we can look at it like, thankfully, gratefully, I
exactly.
have family to go back to.
Yeah,
It's whichever one you want to choose, like
yeah.
how I tell
For
people,
me, it was the biggest feeling of being safe.
right. And like I say in each episode, it's like, and we'll obviously go or grow through life, but life can happen to us or life can happen for us. It's up to us to kind of look at it that way. So you got out of there, you started staying with your parents,
Yeah.
and about how long did that last till you had your Britney Spears moment and then just were like, you know what, I'm ready to go on and be Coco
Yeah,
again.
so I ended up moving in with a friend, probably about a year and a half later from when I left. I was with him for probably 9 months. Kind of just hanging out with him, looking out. I was his living dog sitter, which was great. Um,
Nice. That's
but
a fun job.
yeah, it was amazing. Little Staffy, he was absolute ball of
Animals
bunch
are
of
healing
energy.
in general. Animals are amazingly
Do you know what? The one
irresistible.
thing I did learn is dogs really love a bald head.
And how did
Like,
you learn that?
so the day I shaved my head, quite honestly, and there's quite a few people who used to see this because Boris, he was the dog's name, he would always jump on top of me. He thought he was a lap dog. Wasn't really, but we went there anyway.
Big dogs think they're
Would
little. I
just
get it.
consistently lick my head all the time. But I did. It was kind of like having a portable shower. It was great. Um, but I shaved my head on the 21st of March this year. So it
Okay, so
was
not
it was
that
that
long ago.
yeah, about 2.5 years after I left.
Wow. And it's been what, like 6, 7 months since that?
Yeah, so I started growing it back in when was I think it was middle of June. I started growing it back. So yeah, it was
Well,
fun. But I
that's,
kept I kept it shaved for like 2 months. I loved it. It was great.
I mean, you got to shower every like what, few hours for a while, Boris.
Yeah, well, and it wasn't
So
even
I
a few
mean,
hours, probably every 20 minutes.
there you go. Your head was always clean because
It's
what
always
they say,
perfectly clean and shiny.
dogs' mouths are really clean. I don't know who came up with that, but I mean, I guess it's true. I don't
We'll
know.
roll with it. It doesn't matter.
We'll roll with it. Yeah, we'll roll with it. So then now you said you're living with your friend that you kind of stayed in touch with along the whole journey and the whole growth process.
Yeah, so my absolute best mate, he's literally the male version of myself, um, which it's great. Like he's one of the most amazing, incredible, inspiring people, and he's the person that kind of really kept me on a road where there was that light at the end of the tunnel that I could be
Right.
back to who I was.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the most important things, nowadays is who we keep around, because there's good
Absolutely.
people in each person, but it's like, is that person good for you? Maybe that person's good for that person, but doesn't mean that person's good for me, and so on and so forth. But you're very fortunate. I know it sounds hard to even for you to just like look in the mirror and say, I'm very fortunate. It's probably
Oh
not
no,
easy still.
you know what? There's people who are stuck in that kind of a situation that I was in, and they haven't been able to get out of it, or they're just getting into it now.
Right.
I'm one of the very lucky few that has made it out the
Absolutely.
other side and can look back and go, do you know what? I got through it, and I will never classify myself as a victim,
Right.
but I will 110% classify myself as a survivor.
Yeah, absolutely. Those of you who have not favorited Miss Coco with the little chocolate, please do give her a favorite. And everybody who's just joined or joined a little bit ago, welcome to my show. My name is Cureage or Cure. This is Grow Through It. This is episode lucky number 7, where we have 2 guests each week, every Monday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight if you're on the East Coast. If you're in Australia like Miss Coco, it is 2:43 p.m. there, but 2 p.m. is a start time. So if anyone would like to be on the show, you are welcome to add me on Instagram, message me, whatever you feel more comfortable. I also have Snapchat, etc. And if you'd like to listen to some of Coco's music, we're about to talk about that in a second. Add her on Instagram. She has her links for SoundCloud. And everybody, thank you again for being here. Thank you for all the favorites, for all the love, and for hanging out. So Coco,
Yes.
with your music, what did that start before the whole incident, or was that something that
So I've been singing since before I can remember, but professionally singing since about 2013.
Oh wow, okay.
So I was doing it 6 to 7 days a week. I'd work full time in a retail job, and then I would go from that straight into going and doing a gig, either whether it be at a wedding, at a corporate function, doing my own performance somewhere. So
And you sing a little bit of everything, correct?
I do sing a little bit of everything. My own stuff is more like a mix of pop, country, and it's been classified as R&B as well.
Okay. I like how you rolled your eyes on that one.
I'm not, look, honest to God, I have no idea what genre of music I fit into, but if you just
fit into Coco's
try and
music, right?
just think of a baby that's been created from like Ed Sheeran, Adele, Amy Winehouse, and
all great performers, absolutely.
Yeah, Michael Bublé. Put all that together, and whatever that comes out with, that's it.
I love that. Lady G, if you're still here, hopefully, go ahead and hop into the guest box. We're gonna have to get Coco out of here soon because she does have a job interview in, what did you say, 15 minutes, correct?
Yeah, so it starts in 15 minutes. I've got to get there in about 10.
So one thing I did want to kind of go through, I don't know if you were there, you're listening, with the whole kintsugi process. Have you girls heard of that? Well, especially, Coco, like it's so the kintsugi practice is basically it's a Japanese form of culture, a philosophy to taking a handmade type of pottery, like a bowl, a cup, things like that, and completely breaking it into pieces. And then what they do is they take the melted gold and they seal it back together. And that's what makes it even more beautiful than it was in the first place. So I feel like that, to me, I like to talk about it here and there in episodes, but that to me feels like that fits you very well. So when you get a chance, maybe after your interview, definitely check that out because I think you'll love it. It's a beautiful thing. There's even like the drawing a little bit of blanks, but basically the symbols of what it means and how you can write it out in Kenji, Japanese language. So
No,
Lady
definitely.
G, how did you feel about Coco's, and vice versa? Coco, how did you feel about Lady G's story?
I loved hearing Coco's because it's relatable. Like I said, I was in a relationship for 13 years and it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine. So definitely It's been a year of discovering myself. So it's great to meet other people who can relate to that.
Yeah. I guess with Lady G's, like what she saw very early on, it's almost like it's a yin and yang. I mean, I'll be really honest, I had the most beautiful, perfect upbringing. And my family were amazing. My parents are still together, everything like that. Like I couldn't fault my childhood. And then obviously just everything kind of hit the fan when I got older. So to kind of see the perspective from young to now versus the backwards kind of journey that I did,
Right, going back.
it's nice to be able to kind of see that difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a lot of people go and they compare themselves, to different, like, man, I'm not where this person is, or I'm not where that person is, or I don't look like this person. And instead, we can easily just say like, hey, I'm on my path, like they're on their path. But like ultimately, like right now, having you girls here tonight, you both grew through that situation. You got out of, Lady G got out of that. I'm gonna just call it the hood. No, she got out of a really, toxic environment around her family. And same thing with Coco, got out of a really toxic environment with her, her ex partner. And through that all, you had your ups and downs, but now here you both are, And again, if anyone has not favorited these two ladies, please do, Miss Lady G and Miss Coco. Lady G is going for her top badge, so the favorites and all the love is definitely appreciated. Coco has music that we wish we had time to listen to tonight, but unfortunately she's gonna have to hop off soon. But if you'd like to, on your Instagram, right? Are the links?
Yeah, it is on my
Okay,
Instagram.
cool. SoundCloud, all that. And so going back, Coco said that you related a lot to the second quote, that I will die one day is what wakes me up to life every single day. And then Lady G, I felt this one for you was the change begins with acceptance, and acceptance of what is already so, and moving on. And so it was like, and I swear to you, I picked these quotes. I didn't write them down. They're from my calendar. Like legitimately, that was kind of like your circumstance, right? Like you accepted your family, like this is who they are. That's cool, but I'm not going to be that way, right? So is there anything that you ladies would like to share with the audience before we start to close out the show? Any tips or something that, anyone that's going through similar situations that you went through and grew through, that maybe that could help them grow as well?
Yeah, so
Shave
I
your
mean,
head.
for me, but yeah, totally, just take it all off. No,
I'm gonna go do that right after the show.
it's a clean, fresh shaven look. So I think for me, the one thing I would tell anyone is, no matter what situation you're in, whenever you think that you can't take another step forward, or you can't keep going,
Right.
you've already come through so much in your life that you probably don't even realize was a small triumph. And the only thing stopping you from taking that next step is that one thought in your mind. The second you go, I can do it, is the second you take those.
Celebrate the small victories, right?
100%.
And then eventually those small victories add up and they become huge, triumphant. How about you, Lady G?
I guess my thing would be, it's so easy to feel stuck in life. Like this is what you have to do, but that's not always the case. Even for both of our stories, even when it feels like there's no out, there's always an out. And I think this generation, it's so easy to feel lonely and alone. And you'd be surprised just reaching out who's actually there for you to help you with the journey, especially being on this app.
No, and facts. And it's funny because, a lot of people will say they're surrounded by people, but still feel alone. And I think Coco can also relate to this too. Like, and I've been there, where we are with somebody, even if it's a romantic relationship, and we feel alone. We're with somebody, but we still feel alone. And so that's when we know, like, whatever you want to call it, red flag or time to go. I call them black flags. Like if you see something like that, it's a black flag. That means like, okay, gotta go. But I really appreciate you ladies being here tonight. This was the first official featured episode. So anyone who has not favored these two, please do. I know Miss Coco has to hop out of here because she does have a job interview in a few minutes. So definitely
This is
good
my
luck on
preparation.
that.
It's my focus time.
Yeah,
We're
this
gonna
is helpful. You're
manifest
gonna
it.
go in there.
Good.
Exactly, you're gonna go in there
Exactly.
just
Like,
full
I've got it all out now.
confidence.
Like any form of negative energy is just, it's gone. Like there's nothing there.
Just
It's all positivity and good vibes.
and if you need to, you know what I mean, just think of Bruno, right? Was it Bruno? The
Boris.
dog? Boris,
Yeah.
sorry, I don't know why I said that.
I
Just
might
think
have
of
to
the
remove the
Boris
wig for that
showers.
thought process to come through.
Yeah, just think of the Boris showers that you would get, and that will help you. You know, they'll keep you smiling throughout the whole interview.
True, very
So,
true.
Coco, thank you for being here tonight,
Not a
and
problem. Thank you so
best
much for
of luck
having
on
me.
that interview. Let me know how that goes.
Right.
I
Hit me up
will
on
do.
Instagram.
It's lovely to be here, guys. Thanks, guys.
Lady G, I also appreciate you being here tonight. Those of you who have just joined, welcome to Grow Through It. We start the show every Monday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. If you are in Australia, chances are it's around 2 p.m. your time. But anything else you'd like to share with the audience, Miss Lady G? I know you are going for your top badge. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I am. We just went to that class last Tuesday, so we out here.
Okay, you already got the class.
Yeah.
Getting it in there, all right. And you got all the prerequisites, correct?
Be getting there. Yeah.
Lady G
And if
for
you
top
guys haven't
badge.
favorited Cure, please make sure you favorite Cure.
It's okay. I'm not worried about that. I'm just glad everybody's here. And I appreciate everyone for all the love and all the support for being here tonight. It was a big episode. Not that the other ones weren't, but this one was definitely a little special because it was our first featured episode. And I've never had this many views in my entire stream, my entire stream career. So I appreciate everybody. Lady G, thank you very much for being here on the show and sharing your story of growth with your family. You can hop out whenever you want. I'm going to go ahead and close out the show. Everyone, thank you again for coming to Grow Through It. Here we are every Monday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, Tuesday. I guess it'd be technically Tuesday if you're on the East Coast, midnight. And if you're in Australia, like Coco is, it's 2 p.m. Tuesdays there. So everyone, thank you again for being here. A little thing I'm going to do different tonight is open up to, I know a lot of people have heard of this, and a lot of people have not, is the kintsugi practice in the Japanese culture. If anyone, would like to learn a little bit more of that, obviously you can look it up. If you want, I can spell it for you. Go ahead and push one in the comments if that's something that you'd like to learn a little bit about. I can talk about it as well in here. But if not, that's okay. Okay, I see some ones. So I will spell it out first so you guys can also look it up, and then I'll talk a little bit about it. It's KINTSUGI, kintsugi. So basically, kintsugi is a practice that, yes, thank you, Emoji J. Kintsugi is a practice of a form of, I guess, perfecting things, right? And what they do is they take handmade pottery. Back in the day, they would actually make these potteries, these bowls, these plates, things like that. And they would break them and take the pieces, all the pieces of these, broken pottery, and they would mold and melt gold, like pure gold, and seal up all the cracks to form, the philosophy behind it is that now, before it was beautiful, it was amazing, and then now it's even more beautiful, it's even more perfect, or whatever, it's progressed, right? So that's that. If you guys want, go ahead and Google all that. I love it because it really correlates a lot with the show itself. But again, everybody, thank you for being here. This was episode number 7 of Grow Through It. with your host, me, Cureage or Cure. Come through anytime. I do stream here and there. So if you guys just join, come by every Monday night at 9 p.m. Pacific is the show. If you're on the East Coast, it's midnight for you. If you're in Australia, like one of our guests was, it is typically 2 p.m. for you. So again, everybody, thank you so much for all love. I've seen everybody that's coming in here, and I appreciate you all. So I know it's a little early. We can keep going if you like. I can start rambling, but again, if you guys want to be or are interested in being in the show, it is where we talk about different adversities we faced. So each week I have two guests. I talk a little bit about myself, and each guest talks about a certain adversity, certain struggle they went through in their life, and not how they just went through it, but how they actually grew through it and grew from it and became the people they are today. Because we can, we can take things like, for example, I'll just take something simple like getting fired from a job. You get fired from a job, and then now you're mad. Now you don't like people. You don't want to talk to these people. You hate your manager, whatever it may be. You get to that point, and that becomes who you are. So instead, you can be like, look, I understand, what happened. You go through your feels, you go through the motions, you get that out of the way, and then you move forward, and that's how we kind of grew through it. And if you were here, you saw how Miss Lady G, how she grew through her situation when she was younger at a very young age. And then Coco's story, much later age, not that she's old, but obviously she wasn't 11 years old. She was a little older than that. And she had to grow through a certain adversity of being in a very toxic and harsh relationship that was very scary for her. And none of these things are easy, but they're choosing the harder route to do what's best for them in the long run. And that's what it's all about. So here we grow through it. So if anyone ever wants to come by, please hit that favorite at the top. We talk all about different things in my stream on a regular basis. So if you want to be on the show, if you ever want to be a guest, my Instagram, my Snapchat are in my bio. You can add me and shoot me a message. I will definitely get back to you, and we can get you on the show for next week or the week after. So everybody, I appreciate you again for coming on here. It means a lot to me. Over 800 views. Wow, that's a lot. It's a big deal for someone like me. Never had that before. And everyone, I appreciate all the love. Appreciate you hanging out, being here. Next week, we have a couple new guests that you guys will be very excited to meet. I'm not going to say who they are yet, but come back. Next, like I said, Mondays, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. It's Tuesdays in the afternoon if you're in other countries, or Tuesday mornings if you're in Europe. So again, thank you everybody. I'm going to go ahead and close out. I will hop back on in about half an hour or so. If anyone would like to come back, hang out, shoot the stuff, talk a little bit. But I appreciate everybody coming in here, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day and a good night. Keep growing.